Hello, I'm Esther Githu. It's Monday, May 8th. This is Africa 54. The death toll from flooding in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo now tops 400. It is the deadliest natural disaster in the country's recent history. Deforestation and rebel groups are creating a heavy toll on refugees and the internally displaced inside the DRC. VOA'S Paul Ndiho tells us about the impact on civilians from an eyewitness perspective. And we'll bring you the latest exciting Basketball African League highlights. All that and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. The death toll from flooding that devastated 2 villages in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo last week has more than doubled to over 400, according to the provincial governor. It is now one of the deadliest natural disasters in the country's recent history. Local civil societies say more bodies are being recovered on Monday, adding to the scores of others that were wrapped in bags and piled into mass graves over the weekend. The villages of Bushushu, Nyamukubi in the Kalehe Territory, South Kivu province, were inundated on Thursday after days of torrential rain triggered landslides and causing rivers to overflow their banks. At least 176 people were reported dead on Friday, with hundreds of people still missing.
I lost my family. Only me is left. I'm the only survivor. I decided to come and see because I abstained yesterday for fear of fainting. I lost in total 18 family members here in Nyamukubi. The whole Lagoma family was decimated. As you see me, I am the only survivor.
If it was only for 2.5 hours, the river overflowed. The floods invaded several corners. The waters washed away several houses. You saw how the villages were razed. Several people died. Some bodies have been found, and the search continues. This Saturday, the provisional toll is 242 bodies found.
Civil society sources expect the death toll to rise even further as bodies are still floating in rivers and buried under wreckage. Hundreds of people remain unaccounted for, according to the United Nations. The destruction of over 200 hectares forest land in the Democratic Republic of Congo's Virunga National Park is attributed to war, refugees and armed groups who are invading the park to mine charcoal and firewood. VOA'S Paul Ndiho reports from Eastern Congo.
Deforestation caused by war refugees and local armed groups plunging the Virunga National Park for charcoal and firewood is jeopardizing the reserve of Congo. In the background, you can see the choking smoke swirling from the majestic Nyiragongo volcano.
Talk about deforestation. People really don't understand what it's all about. To give you some context, this is what deforestation is all about. People fleeing from their homes who are now in these IDPs descended on these forests and cut down all the trees.
Many refugees risk their safety to gather firewood in this park to survive.
This is where they make charcoal. Everywhere you see them, they are making charcoal. Once done, they carry the charcoal, put it in sacks, and take it by the roadside to sell for money. But the biggest challenge is that even these people making charcoal need to make more money. They are just trying to survive.
For 25-year-old Beatrice Biabagambi, a mother of 6 who fled her home in Chibumba due to the conflict and now lives in Kanyaruchinya, IDP, walks 8 miles each day to gather firewood. Her story is a testament to the tenacity and hope of the hundreds of thousands of women in internally displaced persons camps who face a constant hardship and sexual violence.
We wake up at 6 a.m., walk 8 miles, and arrive here at 9 a.m. And then we start collecting firewood. When we are done, we grab the firewood, put it on our heads, head back home, arrive at 4 p.m., and then rest.
Mvunganyi and her family are living a difficult life. As we walked through this vast chunk of land, Beatrice says armed men have raped her in this forest several times.
Every day I come here to look for firewood with my baby because I don't have where to leave him. But more importantly, we are hungry. That's why I come here every day to look for firewood.
Selling charcoal is the only economic activity a lot of people can do for now. Most of these people have fled from their homes. They don't have an income, they don't have jobs, they don't have what to eat, they don't even have anything to wake up to. So what are they doing? They come here, cut down these trees, and make charcoal.
Several other women I spoke to agree that women are at great peril in the forest as they collect firewood. To combat sexual assault, activists like Pasi Mobalama are working to sensitize women in IDP camps on ways to protect themselves and seek assistance.
As women, we are exposed to many things. When raped, you end up with all sorts of diseases and you might get pregnant. I am here to tell you women who are listening, don't keep quiet when you are raped. Speak out. We have a support system here that can help you.
To prevent attacks, women are told to travel in groups into the forests to collect firewood.
For an eyewitness account on the deforestation and conflict in the DRC, I'm joined by my colleague Paul Ndiho, who recently returned from Congo. Paul, give us a sense of the situation in eastern Congo.
Thank you, Esther. It's good to be back.
You're welcome.
The situation there is very, very grim. The stories that you hear, you read about, it's very much a reality when you hit the ground. It strikes you because the women are dealing with unprecedented levels of lack of hope, no food, no water, no medicine. There is so much going on in that country that I don't know what the international community can do.
You talk about, women living in a terrible situation. But were you able to meet some of these women and children in the displaced camps?
We went to about 10 IDPs within Goma or around Goma. And what's striking when you reach some of these camps, the sheer number of people. There are over 1 million displaced people in the DRC. These are all internal displaced persons living within maybe about 15 kilometers outside of Goma. So when you hit some of these camps, the one thing that strikes you is the level of poverty. There is lack of food, lack of water, lack of medicine. There is absolutely nothing there on the ground for these people to wake up to. There is no medicine. If a kid dies, they just dig a grave and just bury the kid. You walk, you talk to people, everybody is crying of hunger. They are hungry, they need food. There was an example, or there was a lady that I met. She was really, really sick. I grabbed some medicine, I gave her some water. People said, no, she doesn't need that. She just needs a little bit of money just to buy some food. That's the level of poverty or the level of distress that these people are dealing with.
And on top of that, the much talked about rebel group in that area is the M23 rebels. Did you have an encounter with these rebels?
I mean, to be honest with you, M23 is just part of the problem. There are more than 120 militia groups, according to the UN and other NGOs in there. So the M23 is just part of the bigger problem. But for sure, right now as we speak, the M23 rebels have moved out of the centers that they occupied, or the land, the big chunk of land that they had captured over the years. So now they have gone back to some of the areas that were agreed upon during the Nairobi summit. So you have East African troops that have taken over some of those former rebel controlled areas. So yes, the M23 are there. but they're not visible. At night, they show up. During the day, they're wearing civilian clothes, so you can't tell who is M23 and who is not M23.
So what are the forces really doing there? We have the East African Regional Force. We understand even SADC is sending some forces. What is their role, and why haven't they been able to quell this crisis?
Esther, that's the million-dollar question. I think the most important thing is to bring about a semblance of peace and stability. All these external forces or internal forces are trying to achieve one thing: bring peace, bring back people to their homes. Because when you drive around those neighborhoods, they're all deserted. There is not a single soul in those houses. So what the East African troops are doing is trying to bring people back to their communities.
Paul, thank you very much, and good job over there. Glad to have you back here.
Thank you.
Paul Ndiho updating us on the situation in eastern Congo. A ceasefire between Sudan's warring sides appears to be holding in Khartoum on Monday after talks to bolster the shaky truce began over the weekend in Saudi Arabia. VOA's Anthony Labruto has more.
Shortly after fighting erupted in Sudan nearly a month ago, thousands of people began streaming into northern South Sudan to escape the conflict. Lena Mijok, a refugee from South Sudan, had no desire to return to her home country that she left in 2013 due to civil war, but was left with little alternative.
If I had the opportunity, I would not have come back to South Sudan. I would have gone anywhere, but there were no roads.
Mijok had managed to carve out a new life for herself as a maid in the city of Omdurman, across the River Nile from Sudan's capital, Khartoum. As fighting broke out, Mijok and her family, except for her husband, took a treacherous 2-day bus ride to South Sudan. Mijok's husband stayed behind because the family did not have enough money to pay for his bus fare. Now Mijok and her family are among thousands of refugees that now occupy a former university campus in South Sudan's Renk County. She says the conditions here are bad.
The heat is killing us, and some people have gone 4 days without eating, and there is no place to sleep, and children are getting sick.
Before the start of the conflict in Sudan last month, around 800,000 South Sudanese refugees from the country's civil war a decade ago lived in Sudan, according to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees.
Since the conflict broke out, we have registered over 25,000 people who have crossed, but the numbers are likely much higher because we cannot register everyone, and many people are also crossing via informal border points.
Aid agencies fear the influx of refugees will worsen an already dire humanitarian crisis in South Sudan, where more than 2 million people are displaced and 3/4 of the 11 million strong population need aid. Anthony Labruto, VOA News, Washington.
Now to London, where hundreds of thousands of people lined the streets of the city on Saturday to witness the coronation of Britain's King Charles III in a ceremony filled with remarkable tradition and colorful pageantry. Henry Ridgel has more from London.
It's a moment 7 decades in the making. Charles became heir to the British throne at the age of just 3. Now 74, his coronation marks a new chapter for an ancient institution. King Charles III and Queen Consort Camilla were taken by carriage from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Abbey. Hundreds of thousands of people lined the route of the procession, just as they had done 8 months ago for the funeral of Charles's mother, Queen Elizabeth II. A small number of anti-monarchy protesters briefly drowned out the cheers. Inside the Abbey, a congregation of more than 2,000 people, the royal family, kings and queens, presidents and prime ministers, and members of the public. Prince Harry, Charles's youngest son, attended alone amid continued strained relations. This was not a day for family drama, though, but for pomp and pageantry, deeply imbued with Christian faith. Some of the rituals remain unchanged over 1,000 years.
The coronation oath has stood for centuries and is enshrined in law. Are you willing to take the oath?
I am willing.
For the first time, female bishops took part in the service alongside leaders of other faiths. The Archbishop of Canterbury placed the crown upon Charles's head.
God save the King! God save the King!
Gun salutes rang out across Britain. In a touching moment, Charles's son, Prince William, pledged his allegiance to the King.
I, William, Prince of Wales, pledge my loyalty to you, and faith and truth I will bear unto you, as your liege man of life and limb. So help me God.
Here in London and in cities, towns and villages across Britain, people have gathered together to watch this ancient and extraordinary ceremony. The rain may be falling, but people here are determined that spirits won't be dampened. Many felt they witnessed a part of history.
Moment once in a life, you know, it's magical. I mean, it's such an incredible event.
The King and Queen returned to Buckingham Palace in the gold state coach, built in 1762. Above a sea of British flags, the royal family gathered on the balcony to greet an adoring crowd. Charles and Camilla face undoubted challenges, keeping the monarchy relevant to modern British society, facing up to its role in Britain's often brutal colonial past. The King has voiced determination to take on those challenges, an evolving monarchy steeped in colourful tradition. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, London.
Still to come, the latest exciting Basketball Africa League highlights. Stay with us. In other news, Senegalese opposition figure Ousmane Sonko failed to report to court Monday for his own appeal in a defamation case that could jeopardize his run for president next year. Sonko warned on Sunday that he would no longer respond to court summonses without guarantees for his safety. Gunmen killed a Cameroonian journalist late Sunday in Bamenda, a city in the northwest region, according to the local journalists union. Anye Ndenso, the West and Northwest Regional Bureau Chief for weekly newspaper The Advocate, was in a pub when unidentified assailants shot him, according to colleague Melanie Defru. And the owner of the Liberian-flagged oil tanker Monjasa Reformer says 6 crew members kidnapped by pirates last month from a Danish oil tanker off Congo were rescued Monday from Nigeria. There was no mention if a ransom was paid. Monjasa's CEO Anders Ostergaard says the 6 crew members are in relatively good health. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen reiterated that the United States could run out of cash as early as June 1st. Her warning comes days before President Joe Biden is expected to hold meetings with congressional Democrats and Republicans. VOA's Veronica Balderas-Iglesias explains what's at stake.
Financial and economic chaos would ensue if Congress doesn't act. It must raise the debt ceiling and allow the U.S. government to borrow more money to pay its bills, warned Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on ABC this week.
Whether it's defaulting on interest payments that are due on the debt or payments due for Social Security recipients or to Medicare providers, we would simply not have enough cash to meet all of our obligations.
International repercussions could also be expected.
U.S. Treasury securities are the safest bedrock security underlying the global financial system. A failure of the United States to honor all of its debt would call into question our credit worthiness.
President Joe Biden is expected to hold meetings early this week with congressional leaders of both parties. Democrats have been pressing for the debt ceiling to be lifted without preconditions. Republicans demand federal spending be cut. Senator James Lankford shared his expectations for the meetings on ABC's This Week program.
Everyone knows that there's areas of waste in government. We should actually sit down and be able to talk about it and say, what are the priorities? How are we going to spend on those priorities, and to make sure that we're realigning?
President Biden has so far refused to negotiate with Republicans on the debt ceiling, insisting it be raised without conditions, as has been done dozens of times under presidents of both parties in the past. Speaking on NBC's Meet the Press, House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries said the party is united behind Biden.
Ultimately, everyone evaluates on the merits any particular piece of legislation that is presented to us, but we are in lockstep with President Biden. We're in lockstep with Senate Democrats. We want to do the right thing for the American people.
The United States has never defaulted on its debt. With funding expected to run out this summer, calls for negotiations are growing by the day. Veronica Balderas-Iglesias, VOA News, Washington.
The Basketball African League action was fast and furious over the weekend. VOA's Jackson Mvunganyi has the latest exciting BL highlights.
Uganda's Enabu tries a three and misses, but Obe is there for the rebound with a pass to Jones for a successful three to tie the score at 34, 1 minute before the half. Cape Town down by 3 in the third, but Selepe with an assist to Sele for an incredible dunk. Cape Town extends their lead to 7 when Benije finds a Prince Law to Sele, who gets the shot in. Tied at 67 with under 7 minutes left, Cape Town's Selepe finds Benije for a corner three-pointer. Sele lets the clock run as Cape Town makes it through to the next round with a final score of 80-70. Host team Elali was up early in the game when Gendi loses the ball to Slack's Miller Jr., who drives to the basket for 2. Slack up by 9 when Elali's Thompson has the ball, but Mara gets the steal and makes an incredible dunk. A minute to go in the first half when Egypt's Gendi passes to Thompson for 2 points to get some points on the board. Turn of events in the third when Egypt takes the lead by 14 as Thompson goes for 2 but misses, and Guinea's Nwabozu passes to Miller Jr. on the other end of the court for 2. Under 5 minutes left and Egypt has quite a lead when Thompson finds Orabi to extend their lead. Back-to-back games ending with a final score of 80-70 as Egypt advances to the playoffs. Petro up with a significant lead of 13 in the second quarter when Egypt's Thompson tries a 3 and misses, but Abdunassil gets the rebound with a pass to Omot, who gets a much-needed 3. With Angola up by 1 when Dandao passes to Goncalves, to Pedro, and back to one another again as Pedro completes the play with a dunk. Under 3 minutes left and Egypt's Thompson passes to Ismail for a slam dunk, which ties the game. Elali's up by 2 with 2 minutes to go, but Petros Moraes gets the layup to tie the game once again. The excitement continues with Thompson's pass to Ismail to Omot, who gets the ball in, putting Egypt in the lead with only 15 seconds left. And what an ending! Petro tries for one last chance as Goncalves passes to Diabate, who gets it to Moraes for the last shot and misses, but Goncalves is there to drop it in for a buzzer beater. Petro de Luanda wins it 91-90. A close game in the first half with Uganda up by 3 when Bale comes down the court with a pass to Justice Jr., who can't get it in but gets fouled. 7 minutes until halftime and Biera down by 5. Mungwambe gets the inbound pass to Young for a baseline drive to the basket for 2. Biera Sperry doing what he can for some points on the board with a nice basket and a foul on the play. Under 2 minutes left in the game and City Oilers up by 20. Justice Jr. knocks down a 3 from way downtown to extend the team's lead. Biera tries for one more shot with Chirombe at the free throw line but misses, and Numamade tries for a 3, but time runs out with Uganda triumphing over Mozambique 96-75.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.
We're building on the Wales Defence Investment Pledge to invest 2% of our GDP in defense. We're developing new partnerships, including in the Indo-Pacific. We welcome the participation of Japan, Australia, South Korea, New Zealand, who share our vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific region. And of course, the alliance remains relentlessly focused on Russia's aggression against Ukraine. We've demonstrated again our unity of purpose and our unity of action. I am confident that that will endure for as long as it takes for Ukraine to defend its sovereignty, its territorial integrity, its independence. That includes more ammunition for HIMARS, air defense interceptors, and artillery rounds, as well as anti-armor systems, small arms, heavy equipment transport vehicles, and maintenance support. The United States and Ukraine's partners support meaningful diplomatic efforts that can achieve a just peace and a durable peace that ensures that Russia can't simply rest and refit its troops and then relaunch the war at a time of its choosing. Until that peace is achieved, the United States, together with allies and partners from around the world, will continue to provide the assistance that Ukraine needs to defend its territory and defend its people.